At the edge of the Epsilon Quadrant, where the dim light of distant stars barely pierced the black veil of space, two battered warships faced each other like wary predators, thirsty for blood. A relatively unremarkable skirmish to the casual observer, but one that would decide the fate of the warring factions, and those who called this violent corner of the cosmos home. Inside the command room of the Icarus, Captain Grell eyed his counterpart through the communications screen, Commander Loss of the warship Resolute. There was a coldness in Loss' eyes, a darkness that resonated with the vast emptiness outside. They cordially traded veiled threats and insults, the way seasoned adversaries do. Commander Loss, still clinging to that desperate hope. This sector won't belong to your faction, no matter how stubbornly your crew resists our advances. Captain Grell smirked, finding a hint of amusement in the tense standoff. Loss' lips formed a humorless smile. Well, Captain, I wouldn't be too confident. The Resolute has survived the fires of many battles. We didn't get this far by rolling over for the likes of you. Grell looked away for a moment, his eyes falling upon the lifeless form of a crew member who had fallen to a Resolute boarding attempt. A simmering rage began to build up within him. With a sharp inhale, he fixed his gaze on Loss once again. "Shall we continue our dance, then?" Grell hissed, his fingers hovering over the intercom button, prepared to relay his very next order in the battle. Loss' eyes glinted with a fierce determination. "By all means, let's," he replied, his hand hovering over his own intercom button, ready to issue orders to his crew. As the two ships resumed their deadly dance of laser fire and evasive maneuvers, Grell couldn't shake the image of the fallen crew member from his mind. He knew that every decision he made could result in more casualties on both sides. But he also knew that if he hesitated for even a moment, it could mean defeat for the Icarus. Suddenly, an alarm blared throughout the ship. Grell's heart sank as he realized what it meant. They had taken a direct hit to their engines and were losing power fast. "All hands brace for impact," he shouted into the intercom. The Icarus shuddered violently as it collided with an asteroid field, sending debris flying in all directions. The sound of metal scraping against rock filled the air as alarms continued to blare around them. Grell gripped onto his chair tightly as sparks flew from control panels across the room. "Captain," one of his crew members called out urgently, "we're taking heavy damage. We need to retreat." Grell gritted his teeth, his mind racing with the weight of responsibility. Retreat meant defeat, and he couldn't let that happen. He scanned the room, taking in the chaos around him as crew members desperately worked to keep the ship from falling apart. "We can't retreat," he said firmly, meeting the eyes of each crew member in turn. "We need to hold our ground." There were murmurs of protest, but no one dared to argue with their captain's orders. Grell knew that they were outmatched and outgunned, but he also knew that they had a chance if they fought smart. "Get me Lieutenant Cale," Grell ordered into his comms device. Within seconds, Cale's face appeared on the screen before him. "Lieutenant, I need you to take a team and board the Resolute," Grell said quickly. "Their weapons systems are vulnerable from within." Cale nodded grimly before disappearing from view. As Lieutenant Cale and his team prepared for their boarding operation, Grell's mind was a tempest of strategic calculations. He knew that their only chance of turning the tide lay in disrupting the Resolute's weapon systems. The crew scrambled to load and secure the boarding pods, their faces set in grim determination. The Icarus, still shuddering from impacts, remained locked in its desperate struggle for survival. Cale's team, suited in heavy combat gear, exchanged brief nods of resolve as they entered the launch tubes. The boarding pods, sleek and streamlined, were their only link to the Resolute's interior. The countdown began, and Grell's gaze was fixed on the flickering tactical display, hoping for a miracle. The boarding pods shot out into the void of space, their thrusters firing to propel them towards the Resolute. Inside, Kale's team readied their weapons, preparing for the fight of their lives. The pods jolted as they made contact with the Resolute's hull, and the hatches opened with a hiss. Kale and his team poured into the corridor, their blasters ready. The Resolute's interior was dimly lit and eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. They moved quickly, aware that every second they wasted could mean more damage to the Icarus. Their objective was clear: disable the weapon systems and cause enough disruption to turn the tide of the battle. Meanwhile, on the Resolute's bridge, Commander Loss was fully aware of the boarding pods approaching. His crew moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for the imminent breach. Loss's eyes were cold, calculating. He understood the gravity of the situation. The boarding action could be the decisive factor in the battle. With a nod to his tactical officer, he ordered the activation of internal security protocols. The ship's internal defenses were primed, and the corridors soon buzzed with the sound of deploying security drones and automated turrets. Loss's grim determination was palpable. He would not let the Resolute fall without a fight. As Kale and his team navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the Resolute, they encountered fierce resistance. The security drones, fast and relentless, engaged them in a deadly dance of laser fire. Kale's team responded with precision, their training evident in every shot fired. They pressed forward, determined to reach their objective despite the mounting danger. The walls of the Resolute seemed to close in on them as they fought their way towards the weapon systems, their progress slow but steady. Every corner held the potential for a new threat, and their senses were on high alert. Back on the Icarus, Captain Grell paced the command room, his mind racing. The damage reports continued to roll in, each one painting a grim picture of their situation. The ship's systems were failing, and their power reserves were dwindling. Grell knew that their survival depended on the success of Kale's mission. He stared at the tactical display, watching as the battle outside raged on. The Resolute's relentless assault was taking its toll, and Grell's heart ached at the thought of the sacrifices his crew had made. He could only hope that Kale would complete the mission and turn the battle in their favor. Lieutenant Kale's team finally reached the entrance to the Resolute's weapon control room. The door was reinforced and heavily guarded, but Kale's team was prepared. They set explosive charges and retreated to a safe distance. The charges detonated with a thunderous roar, breaching the door and allowing them entry. Inside, the room was filled with complex machinery and blinking control panels. Kale's team immediately set to work, their goal clear: disable the weapon systems and cause as much chaos as possible. The countdown to their own escape had begun, and every second was precious. As the team worked frantically to sabotage the weapon systems, Commander Loss's face tightened with frustration. He could see the disruption on his monitors and knew that the Icarus's plan was unfolding. He issued orders to his crew, directing them to increase their efforts to repel the boarding party. The internal security forces were redoubling their efforts, and the Resolute's corridors became a battleground. Loss's resolve was unshakable. He would protect his ship and his crew at all costs, even if it meant facing the full fury of the Icarus's last desperate push. The weapon systems on the Resolute began to malfunction as Kale's team successfully planted explosives and disrupted critical circuits. Alarms blared throughout the ship as the malfunction triggered a series of cascading failures. The once efficient Resolute was now in disarray, and the crew scrambled to stabilize the situation. Kale and his team, battered but determined, continued their sabotage, ensuring that the damage they had inflicted would be substantial. The time for their extraction was running short, and they knew they had to make a hasty retreat before the Resolute's internal defenses overwhelmed them. Back on the Icarus, Grell watched with a mix of hope and dread as the Resolute's weapon systems went offline. The tides of battle seemed to shift, but the situation remained precarious. The Icarus's own damage control teams worked tirelessly to keep the ship operational. Grell's tactical display showed that their enemies were in turmoil, but he was well aware that the Resolute was a formidable opponent and would not surrender easily. He braced himself for the next phase of the battle, knowing that their chances of survival hinged on the Resolute's ability to recover from the chaos inside. Lieutenant Kale's team finally regrouped and made their way back to the boarding pods. Their mission successful, but their ordeal far from over. The corridors of the Resolute were now a chaotic mess, with malfunctioning systems and sporadic bursts of enemy fire. They fought their way through, their determination unwavering despite the mounting pressure. As they reached the pods and prepared for extraction, Kale glanced back at the damage they had inflicted. The success of their mission was evident, but the battle was far from won. The boarding pods re-entered the Icarus with their precious cargo. Kale's team emerged, exhausted but victorious. Grell met them with a nod of approval, his relief palpable. The Resolute's weapon systems were in disarray, and the Icarus was now in a stronger position. The crew's spirits lifted as they saw the results of their efforts. Grell gave the order to launch a final offensive, taking advantage of the Resolute's weakened state. The Icarus's weapon systems roared to life, unleashing a barrage of firepower that rocked the Resolute. Commander Loss struggled to maintain control as the Resolute was pummeled by the Icarus's renewed assault. His face was a mask of grim determination as he issued orders to his crew, trying to stabilize the ship's failing systems. The battle was reaching its climax, and the outcome was still uncertain. Loss knew that they had to act quickly if they hoped to turn the tide. He focused on rallying his crew, their resolve tested but not broken. The Resolute's crew fought back with everything they had, desperate to repel the Icarus's final push. Amidst the chaos, the Resolute's internal alarms began to sound a new kind of alert. Commander Loss's eyes widened as he realized the source of the new threat, a series of critical system failures triggered by the damage inflicted by Kale's team. The ship's core was at risk of a catastrophic meltdown. Loss's mind raced as he calculated their options. Evacuation might save the crew, but it would mean abandoning the ship and conceding defeat. The tension in the Resolute was palpable as the crew faced the imminent threat of total destruction. As the situation on the Resolute grew more dire, Captain Grell pressed his advantage, ordering a full assault. The Icarus's weapons hammered the Resolute with relentless precision, targeting key systems to ensure the ship's destruction. The crew of the Icarus fought with renewed vigor, driven by the knowledge that victory was within their grasp. The Resolute's defenses faltered, and it became increasingly clear that their opponent was on the brink of collapse. Grell watched with a mixture of satisfaction and apprehension as the battle reached its climax. Just when it seemed that victory was assured, a sudden and unexpected transmission crackled through the Icarus's communication system. It was a distress signal from the Resolute, but the message was not what anyone expected. "This is Commander Loss," the transmission began. "We've been sabotaged from within. The Resolute is losing power and will soon be lost. We have one final request. If there is any honor left in this battle, let us be remembered not as enemies, but as warriors." The message was met with stunned silence on the Icarus's bridge. Captain Grell's eyes narrowed as he processed the transmission. The request was uncharacteristic of Loss, who had always been a ruthless adversary. Grell felt a pang of unease as he considered the implications. Was it a trap, a final attempt to gain some advantage? Or was it a genuine plea for mercy? The Icarus's crew looked to their captain for guidance, unsure of how to respond. Grell weighed the options, knowing that the decision he made now would have far-reaching consequences for both sides. In the midst of the turmoil, Lieutenant Kale approached Grell with a grim expression. "Captain, we have detected unusual energy readings from the Resolute," Kale reported. "It's possible that there's more to this situation than we initially thought." Grell nodded, acknowledging the new information. He decided to investigate further before making any final decisions. The Icarus's sensors were recalibrated as the crew focused on analyzing the Resolute's energy readings. The tension in the command room was palpable as they awaited further data. Grell's mind raced through possible scenarios, each one more unsettling than the last. The distress signal seemed to imply that there was something more sinister at play, perhaps a hidden agenda or a last-minute gambit by Commander Loss. The Icarus's sensors finally revealed a disturbing anomaly. A series of explosive devices had been planted throughout the Resolute's core, seemingly set to detonate if the ship's systems failed beyond a certain threshold. Grell's face went pale as he realized the full scope of the threat. The revelation was chilling. Commander Loss's final message had not been a plea for honor, but rather a veiled warning of an impending catastrophe. The Resolute was not merely at risk of destruction. It was rigged to ensure that if it fell, it would take as much of the surrounding space with it as possible. Grell knew that the Resolute's self-destruct mechanism, if triggered, could cause a massive explosion capable of devastating nearby systems and potentially even the Icarus itself. The stakes had escalated from a simple battle to a race against time. Grell needed to act quickly to prevent an even greater disaster. Captain Grell immediately ordered a full tactical retreat, instructing his crew to disengage from the Resolute and fall back to a safe distance. The Icarus's weapons ceased fire as Grell's orders were executed with swift efficiency. The crew worked with urgency, navigating the ship away from the doomed Resolute. Meanwhile, Grell initiated an emergency communication channel to Commander Loss, hoping to negotiate a ceasefire and find a way to prevent the impending catastrophe. The desperation in Grell's voice was evident as he appealed for a solution, knowing that the Resolute's destruction would mean the end of both ships and the loss of countless lives. On the Resolute, Commander Loss was visibly exhausted and disheveled, his eyes reflecting the weight of the impending disaster. As he received Grell's emergency communication, he could see the genuine concern in the Icarus captain's eyes. For a brief moment, Loss's stern facade cracked, revealing a glimpse of humanity amidst the chaos. He knew that if the explosive devices detonated, it would be a tragic end for all involved. In a moment of clarity, Loss made a decision that defied his previous ruthlessness. He initiated a manual override of the self-destruct sequence, hoping to buy enough time for both ships to escape the impending explosion. As the Resolute systems struggled to stabilize, Grell's eyes were fixed on the tactical display, watching as the ship's countdown to self-destruction was halted. He knew that Commander Loss had made a courageous and self-sacrificing choice to protect both ships. Grell felt a profound sense of respect for his adversary, recognizing the depth of Loss's commitment to honor, even in the face of certain doom. With the immediate threat of the self-destruct averted, Grell focused on ensuring that his own ship and crew were safely away from the blast radius. The Icarus moved to a secure distance, and the crew anxiously awaited further developments. As the Icarus and Resolute drifted apart, a strange silence settled over the battlefield. The once chaotic scene was now eerily calm, with the remnants of battle scattered across the void. Commander Loss continued to work furiously to stabilize the Resolute, but it was clear that the damage was too extensive. His crew had done all they could, and now it was a matter of survival. Loss sent a final, heartfelt message to Grell, expressing his hope that their sacrifice would lead to a greater understanding between their factions and perhaps, someday, a chance for peace. The Icarus's crew, though safe for the moment, remained on high alert as they watched the Resolute's final moments. Grell stood on the bridge, reflecting on the events that had unfolded. The battle had taken a toll on everyone involved, and the consequences of their actions would be felt for a long time. The final communication from Commander Loss was a poignant reminder of the cost of war and the fleeting nature of honor amidst conflict. Grell's heart was heavy with the knowledge that, despite their victory, the cost had been far greater than anticipated. Suddenly, the Resolute systems emitted a final, ominous signal. Grell's eyes widened as he realized that the ship was not just going to self-destruct. It was initiating a series of detonations that would create a spatial distortion, a black hole-like effect. The purpose of this final act was not merely destruction but to trap anything within the vicinity of the blast. The Icarus's sensors detected the growing distortion, and Grell's mind raced with calculations to avoid being caught in its gravitational pull. The crew sprang into action, their focus now on escaping the rapidly collapsing space around them. The Icarus maneuvered with all its might, its engines straining to push it out of the range of the expanding distortion field. The crew worked frenetically to maintain course and avoid the gravitational effects that threatened to pull them into the impending catastrophe. The ship groaned under the strain as it fought against the growing force. Grell, eyes fixed on the display, guided his crew through the turbulence with a calm and commanding presence, determined to ensure their survival. The Resolute, now fully engulfed in the spatial distortion, began to collapse inward. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying as the massive ship was consumed by the black hole-like effect. The gravitational forces distorted space and time, creating a spectacle that was both beautiful and horrifying. The Icarus, having managed to escape the worst of the pull, watched from a safe distance as the Resolute's final moments unfolded. Grell felt a mixture of relief and sorrow, knowing that they had narrowly escaped the disaster but at a great cost. As the remnants of the Resolute vanished into the distortion, a new signal emerged from the void. The signal was faint and garbled, but it carried a familiar tone, one that suggested the presence of another vessel. Grell's heart skipped a beat as he realized that there might be survivors from the Resolute who had escaped the final destruction. The Icarus's crew began scanning for any signs of life or distress signals, hoping against hope that there were those who had managed to survive the cataclysmic events. The scan revealed a small, heavily damaged escape pod drifting near the edge of the distortion field. The pod's distress beacon was weak but persistent. Grell ordered a rescue operation, knowing that even a single life saved was worth the effort. The Icarus's crew prepared a recovery team to approach the escape pod, their mission now to find any survivors from the Resolute and offer them assistance. The tension was high as they navigated the dangerous environment to reach the pod. As the recovery team approached the escape pod, they were shocked to find that its occupant was none other than Commander Loss himself. The once formidable adversary was now disheveled and battered but alive. Loss, though weak, expressed his gratitude for the rescue. Grell, though still wary, extended a hand of solidarity, recognizing that the former enemy's survival was a testament to the unexpected twists of fate in the galaxy. Loss's presence on the Icarus was a profound reminder of the unpredictable nature of conflict and the potential for unexpected alliances. As Commander Loss was brought aboard the Icarus, he and Grell had a moment of introspection. The two leaders, who had once been bitter enemies, now found themselves in a position to reflect on their actions and the consequences of their decisions. Loss shared his final intentions with Grell, revealing that the spatial distortion was meant to be a last-ditch effort to prevent further conflict by destroying the Resolute in a way that would deter future aggression. Grell listened intently, understanding the complexity of Loss's motivations and the sacrifices he had made. The Icarus's crew provided medical attention to Loss, who was recovering from the ordeal. The once implacable commander was now seen in a new light by Grell and his crew. The battle had revealed the human cost of their conflict, and it was clear that both sides had suffered greatly. Grell and Loss began to discuss the possibility of a truce, recognizing that the cycle of violence could only be broken through dialogue and mutual understanding. The conversation was tentative but hopeful, a small step towards resolving the larger conflict. As the Icarus navigated away from the remnants of the battlefield, the crew found themselves contemplating the future. The events had changed their perception of the war and of each other. The presence of Commander Loss on their ship symbolized the potential for change and the possibility of forging a new path. Grell and Loss continued their discussions, working towards a mutual agreement that could pave the way for a broader peace. The journey was far from over, but the seeds of reconciliation had been planted. Weeks later, the Icarus and its crew found themselves at the forefront of diplomatic efforts to end the conflict. Grell and Loss, now unlikely allies, worked together to broker a ceasefire and initiate peace talks between their factions. The process was arduous and fraught with challenges, but the resolve to end the violence drove them forward. The scars of the battle remained, but the willingness to seek a peaceful resolution marked a significant shift in their approach. The galaxy watched with bated breath as the two leaders navigated the complex terrain of diplomacy. The peace talks proved to be a turning point, with both sides recognizing the futility of continued warfare. The treaty that emerged from the negotiations was a testament to the hard-won lessons of the conflict and the shared desire for a better future. Grell and Loss, despite their differences, had forged a bond through their shared experiences. The galaxy began to heal, and the scars of battle gradually faded as new opportunities for cooperation and understanding took shape. As the years passed, the once hostile factions found common ground and worked towards rebuilding their worlds. The legacy of the Resolute and the Icarus became a symbol of hope and reconciliation. The story of the battle and the unexpected alliance between Grell and Loss was recounted as a lesson in the power of empathy and the possibility of change. The galaxy, though still marred by its challenges, had taken a significant step towards a more unified and peaceful future. However, the final twist in the tale emerged when a hidden message was discovered within the Resolute's data logs. The message revealed that Commander Loss had been working covertly with a shadowy third faction, manipulating the conflict from behind the scenes. The true nature of the spatial distortion was not merely a desperate act of self-destruction but part of a larger scheme to destabilize the galaxy for the benefit of this unknown faction. Grell and Loss were left to confront the reality that their struggle had been orchestrated as part of a larger, more insidious plot. The revelation sent shockwaves through the peace process, casting doubt on the true motives behind the conflict and the role of the enigmatic third faction. Grell and Loss, now allies with a shared goal, vowed to uncover the full extent of the conspiracy and bring those responsible to justice. The battle for peace had taken on a new dimension, with the stakes higher than ever. The galaxy, once again on the brink of uncertainty, looked to its leaders to navigate the emerging threats and safeguard the hard-won peace. In the aftermath of the revelations, Grell and Loss embarked on a new mission, to expose the shadowy faction and prevent further manipulation. Their efforts were met with both support and resistance as they delved deeper into the web of deception. The struggle was far from over, but the resolve to confront the hidden enemies and protect the galaxy from further conflict united them in their quest for justice. As the saga unfolded, the true nature of the conflict was laid bare, and the galaxy faced its greatest challenge yet. Grell and Loss, once adversaries but now comrades, continued their fight against the unseen forces seeking to exploit the chaos. The future remained uncertain, but their determination to uncover the truth and build a lasting peace drove them forward. The legacy of their struggle would be one of resilience, hope, and the enduring quest for a better, more unified galaxy. But tell me, did you like this story? Would you change anything? Would you like a sequel? Leave it in the comments, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications and leave your like. And for more stories like this, click on the video that appears on the screen.